Pigweed here. Today we review an IPA and discuss the Unabomber. Hello and welcome to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Good evening, Crowhill.
Good evening, Pigweed.
What's on your mind?
I am really getting annoyed at the woke superego in ChatGPT.
Ah!
If you ask ChatGPT a bunch of questions, and I actually use it regularly,
Right.
and if you ask it a question about a controversial topic,
Yeah.
it will lecture you and give you all this, but remember that blah, blah, blah. And some people say, and it'll give you all this hedging language. It's just really annoying. I just want to get an answer to my question. I don't want to be lectured by some woke computer.
Fair enough.
And that's what you get. And if you ask it about, where is Venus or something like that, it's not going to give you any. But if you ask it anything remotely controversial, it's going to give you. And here's the thing. Why? Does it think that by giving me this hectoring, lecturing tone, it's somehow going to make some difference in the way I use the information?
Yeah.
It's really annoying. But it shows that whoever programmed the thing programmed some sort of a woke superego on top of the large language model. It's it's interesting and annoying at the same time.
So whenever you run into it.
Oh, well, when we were looking up Ted Kaczynski.
Ah, Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah,
Yes.
looking up the Unabomber and asking questions about the Unabomber, and just left and right could not avoid saying, remember that the Unabomber was a violent bullet and his ideas are not blah, blah, blah. It's like, yes, I know that. I'm just trying to understand,
Ah.
And at one point I just said, I'm getting kind of sick of your woke lecturing and hectoring. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to blah.
Apologize?
Yeah. Yes. It's actually, it's amusing, but it's also incredibly annoying.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope this is not annoying.
I hope not, because this is coming to the end. Please,
Yeah?
Lord, help me if I drink any more non-alcoholic beers.
Okay. This is Omission Brewing Bright-Eyed IPA. Hoppy and bright.
All right.
So
Well,
let's see if that's true.
Well, it looks good.
Yeah.
It looks like a real beer. It smells like a real beer.
Woo. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And I think we discussed last time, I found that beers that are of a malty style fail harder
Yeah.
in a non-alcoholic version
I
than
agree.
hoppy ones do.
We'll-
And also,
we'll find out about that.
They've been like zero. The calories are so low too. I'm going, well, give me some. I'll take the calories if you're going to give me some flavor.
Yeah.
So I saw this one. It's an IPA, so I'm looking for hops, and it's at least got, I don't know, what is it, 100 calories, which seems like nothing, except for it's higher than most.
Yeah. Higher than most of the
that smells
NA beers.
fantastic.
Yeah. That has a very good hop aroma, hop flavor. All that's good. I'm still getting that the alcohol is missing punch in the nose.
But I would say that is less evident in this beer than some of the others. I'm going to put...
the hops tend to mask it.
Yes, I'm going to put Omission. I'm going to move that up my rate.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
The NA beer challenge.
Yes.
I'm moving it up to towards the top.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. It still is missing something, but it's a good flavor. It's got the good.
Yeah. I'm
hop
hoping
forward
to
stuff.
bring this whole challenge business to a close here soon. But,
Okay.
Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah.
Well, he's
who
kind
is this guy?
Well, he died this past summer,
Right.
so I think that's how he popped it back up on the radar.
Okay.
after
Yeah. I was kind of wondering
forgetting
why we
about
cared
him.
about this guy.
Yeah. I was like, well, he came back into the news. Yeah, died. I think he killed himself, but he had been moved from the Supermax to a medical prison.
Okay.
He was 81 years old.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he couldn't take it anymore. He's been taken from wherever. We'll get on with that. So, born in 1942 in Chicago to Polish immigrant parents.
Right.
And grew up in the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah.
Bright young man.
Mm-hmm. Very bright. Very bright.
He skipped the 6th grade and
Skipped 2
the
grades.
11th grade.
Yes, and went to Harvard.
At 16.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that just doesn't happen from happenstance. And he's
Not a dumb kid.
Right, and it's not because he had, guidance guidance from a family. There's a long history of academics. You know,
Right.
he was a sausage maker and a seamstress or something like
Yeah,
that.
he made it because he was bright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On the merits, and not because of his race or sex or gender
what do
orientation
you know,
or any other
back
kind of
in
nonsense.
the olden days.
Yeah, right.
So then he got his math major, right?
Yes.
Then went where did he go? Then he went to get his master's
at Michigan. Is that right? He
Yes.
got his PhD in Michigan.
got his master's and PhD at Michigan, and then got a teaching position in Berkeley.
Okay, right.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. Yeah, so a very, very smart fellow, but also pretty quirky. I mean, early on, pretty quirky.
Pretty quirky.
Yeah.
And he decided long before after getting this job, or before he even got this job, he comments later that he couldn't believe that the guy who was hiring thought that he was really going to stick this out.
Mm-hmm.
He already knew he was getting a job, making some money, and checking out.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the late '60s, he bought a piece of land.
So he only worked for a couple of years. Did he pay off his education and raised enough money to buy a little shack in Montana? Is that the deal?
That's the deal. And then he, at some point, ran out of money and went to work for his brother. His brother and his dad had what was it? Some sort of manufacturing plant.
Okay.
Worked for there briefly. Got fired by his own brother.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, but he already had his cabin and his land.
Not much of a cabin and not much land.
I am severely disappointed. If I'm going to say I'm done with it,
Yeah.
and but I want to live the simplest life possible. So,
Yeah.
all right, so you're already committed to no electricity and no indoor plumbing. All right, so that's a real commitment there.
Yeah.
But 1 acre and a plywood tar paper shack?
10 by 12?
Yeah.
It's pretty small.
Yeah.
I mean, Ben Franklin's studios is almost as big as this
know.
guy's shack. Yeah.
And then and lived there for, 20 years?
Yeah. And when you see pictures inside, there wasn't a whole lot in there.
No, there was a bomb-making section and a bed.
And a bed and a pile of books on the shelf. Yeah.
On the shelf. Yeah. So I was like, how much could 10 acres in the middle of outside a town nobody's ever heard of in Montana cost in 1970?
Yeah. Couldn't have been that much.
Right?
Yeah.
To get 10 acres and a one-room, 20 by 20 foot solid cabin.
Yeah,
So
get the general to go out there and build one of those metal structures for you or something.
I know. Why? Okay, I get it. You want to live a rustic life, but geez.
I guess maybe he.
I mean, it's Montana for God's sake.
Yeah, maybe he was economizing so that he could live the rest of his life on. I don't know what he ate. Would he eat beans and rice for the rest of his life? Or
I
something?
don't know. I mean, he trapped in free water and everything. So I mean, apparently he lived on a couple $100 a year.
Okay.
I
Wow.
don't know. You still got to pay even that little piece of dirt is going to cost you some.
Some taxes
Some
are
kind of taxes.
are there? I don't know if there's property taxes in Montana, but
yeah.
So he had a pretty weird quirky life.
Anyway, in the process, he decided he hated technology.
Yeah.
Technology itself,
But
industrialization,
Yeah.
industrialization of civilization.
And not so much technology as the societal adoption of the Industrial Revolution and technology and all that. I don't really get this sense that he's like necessarily anti-technology, but rather that the effect of technological society he thought was a bad thing. Maybe I didn't get that quite right, but because I mean he used technology, he built bombs.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's to get us back to free technology. So all right. So let's just get through the nuts and bolts here, and then we'll talk about the whys and hows.
Yeah.
So his span of crime starts from 1978 to 1995.
But there was a big gap in there.
He did about 5 years where nobody died.
Right.
But in the end, or bombed, because nobody died anyway. 3 killed and 23 injured.
Yeah.
over all this
Not
time.
the most successful bomber.
No, but I don't know how you know, pre-internet, how you learn. I don't know. Kind of, he made small bombs and made better bombs.
And he got better over time.
Well, because
and he did some very clever things.
As you can see, out of his 3 deaths, 2 of them were his last 2 victims.
Yeah.
So he's just figured
it
out.
He got better at it over time. One of the things he did that I thought was kind of interesting was he made his own nails. You know, a lot of bombs use nails as the projectiles, right? Rather than buying nails from the hardware store, which maybe somehow could have been traced back to a hardware store, he made his own nails to put in his bombs.
Right. So just to get an idea of who his targets were, he had a president of the airline, so that's how he got the Unabomber name. His first kills were people from universities and airlines, and he bombed a plane that just created minor damage and nobody was killed. Didn't bring the plane down.
Right.
So anyway, we've got the university secretary, engineering professor, psychology professor, computer store owner.
And a computer scientist at one point.
Yeah, computer science professor, an advertising executive, a timber industry lobbyist.
Wow.
The advertising caught me off guard at first, but once we talk about it, it makes sense. It's perfectly in line with his philosophy.
Okay.
Geneticist, computer science. So these are the people that he targeted. In 1995, he said he would behave himself if they would publish his manifesto.
Yes, the New York Times and the Washington Post, right?
Yes. Yeah. And there was apparently some real agonizing between the editors and the FBI about whether or not this was a good move, and a lot of people thought it was a bad move.
Right. I remember the debate. Because I'm in the publishing industry, and I remember a lot of people talking about that, whether it's the right thing to do to bow to this kind of pressure to publish something. Because in a way, now you're saying...
Yes, and because by making that, making that decision, you're affecting other people in that industry.
Yes, and also it's kind of like negotiating. Well, it is negotiating with terrorists. You know, you're saying, okay, if you threaten to kill somebody, we'll publish your stuff.
Right. So he had one brother, David, that he was his only real friend and the only person he kept in contact with. David and his family, which he didn't like. But somebody read the manifesto who was aware, who knew David.
Yeah.
And who David apparently shared with her.
Well, it was David's wife who said, "Hey, this is kind of like Ted.
Don't you think this sounds like Ted?" And finally, when he read it with an open mind and got after completely rejecting the idea, he said, "Wow, you're right. It does." And so it turns out, the publishing of the manifesto, he was caught in the same year. So
yeah, that was his downfall.
Right.
Because, and a lot of things about it. Because for one thing, it sounded like him. But then also the manuscript that he sent to both places had been written on a particular typewriter. You know, so there's that kind of thing. You can trace it back to the typewriter.
But there's also, right? I mean, if you're used to getting letters from somebody, just the linguistic, the tone, the pattern, the themes. It's like it wouldn't be that hard to go, that sounds just like my brother.
Words that you're more or less likely to say. Yeah.
But he, in the end, he thought, when he found out it was his brother, he's like, no way.
At first.
So this would never, you kind of think, well, gosh, your brother's going to recognize your writing, but that didn't occur to him, I guess.
Yeah.
Or he was just so focused and enamored with the idea of having his manifesto widely read to bring about the revolution that he wasn't cautious enough.
Right. Yeah. And the thing was, he was very cautious up to that point.
Right.
They didn't find fingerprints on his letters. They didn't find DNA on his letters. He was very careful.
Yeah. He'd get on a bus and go hundreds and hundreds of miles to mail.
Right.
Not to leave the package.
Yeah.
Well, in some cases he did, but in some cases just to mail it so that if it got traced back, it would come back.
Yeah. Apparently, at one point he mailed it from some like D&D aficionado or something like that, Dungeons and Dragons aficionado, and that guy then became a big suspect. Because the package was mailed as if it was from this other guy.
Interesting. He also picked up some pubic hairs from a restroom bathroom included him in the bomb.
Wow.
So, it rings. We found
Somebody else's
some DNA
right.
evidence.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
That's a pretty good idea.
Okay. Yeah, it is a good idea.
So then they wanted to. His lawyers wanted to plead some sort of insanity defense to get him off, and he's like, "Your guys are missing the whole point. You would undercut the entire project by me admitting that I'm a nut. I'm a nut. I'm not a nut. This is
serious
exactly
stuff.
what I think.
Yeah.
Not for crazy reasons. So anyway, they did not make that defense, but I thought the whole point of making that defense was to get him off of death row, which he never was.
Yeah.
So I don't know what.
Yeah. Why wasn't he on death row? I'm not sure.
Was it just the confession itself? And they didn't go to trial. It was the confession itself that got him there. And anyway, he went to Supermax. He went to Florence, Colorado, with the big boys.
And they put him away for good.
Where you can't. It's a 6-inch by 42-inch window that stares up at the sky. So it's the surrounding vista is gorgeous, but not for these guys.
all they see is a piece of blue sky.
Get a piece of blue sky.
Right.
That's it. 23 hours a day in their cell, and he's got. I was surprised at who some of his roommates were.
Okay. Not actually roommates, but people in the same place.
You would think that it would be the people who are too much of a danger, people who to staff and other inmates would be treated like this.
Yeah.
But that's not who's there. You have Terry Nichols, who was
the Oklahoma bomber, right? Yeah.
But personally, not a particularly dangerous person. As far as a Soviet spy, Robert Hansen.
Okay.
Ramzi Youssef.
That's World Trade Center.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. So this guy, he's escaped from so many places.
Oh.
That's how he got in there. Ted, do you know Michael Swango?
Nickname Doctor. No, I don't know that one.
No, Dr.
Sarnaev. Yeah, I know he was one of the Boston guys. Yeah.
Yes. This guy, Larry Hoover, is a Chicago gang leader.
Okay.
I get him because there was the other. He's not on here. Anyway,
so an Al Qaeda guy, the shoe bomber. Yeah, I remember Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, and Dwight York, a pedophile and cult leader. Okay.
And Eric Rudolph.
The Olympic Park bomber. Yeah.
It's an illustrious bunch, but I just don't.
You know what makes them
so
missing from this list? No women.
Well, clearly, no equity going on here, is there? It should be 50% women.
It should be 50% women, just to make things fair.
Yeah. So anyway, then he got moved to a medical prison at age 81 in North Carolina.
Okay.
And apparently killed himself.
All right.
Died by suicide in this prison. I'm guessing it couldn't because the pressure of the prison got to him. I mean,
he'd already been in Superman.
No matter what it is, I could see killing yourself within the first year.
Yeah.
But once you've done 20 years, seems like you've gotten pretty used to the routine.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's just failing health and just decided.
Sure, and he didn't like the nurse and all that kind of thing. Yeah. So, all right. So Ted lived a very strange life and was put away. Good for us, putting him away, getting caught. That was great. And his brother was the one who turned him in. Yeah. Which is interesting. Yeah. But why did he do all this stuff? What was he thinking?
Yes. So let's talk about this manifesto.
Yeah.
And it was longer than I thought. I thought it would be like 2 columns in the New York Times.
No, it was pretty long.
It was pretty long.
I read through maybe half of it, and that was about as much as I could take.
Yeah, I think that was enough because I just wanted to get. There's only a few basic.
Get a sense of it.
Only a few basic ideas you really need to worry about.
Yeah.
And they're basically pretty solid arguments, I think, criticisms of what modern society has done to us. Now, whether or not you're willing to trade that off for its benefits, we'll get into that later.
Okay.
But
so, what do you think are the solid points that he's making here?
So, what he's saying is that people have to have goals and achieve them.
Yes.
If it comes too easy, and he talked about sort of the idle aristocrats,
right?
Then you just become corrupt reprobate. You don't have anything to work towards. You don't have.
Yeah, so he's talking about somebody who has all the money they need. They have all the food, the shelter, everything else that they need. So they make up something to do, like they get into hunting or they get into, I don't know, making pottery or something. They create a goal.
Well, that's it's divided. First off, you've got people who are just struggling to stay alive.
Yeah.
Or back up one more step. Basically, the history of mankind up until 5 minutes ago has been just trying to stay alive.
Right.
Food and shelter, not dying.
Yeah.
Okay. So. That's how we're physically and mentally geared.
Yeah.
For that. Then you come along civilization. Things are getting a little bit easier until post-industrial civilization. Meeting those very basic needs in his mind are too easy.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, what I believe that he would consider the sweet spot is the frontiersman. So, where you are working, all of your working is on your entire day's work is
keeping your house together, getting food, making sure that you're ready for the winter, all this other kind of
yes.
stuff. Yeah,
so you're
keeping
always
your garden
active.
going.
You're always, but you're not on the edge of death. You're doing all right.
Yeah.
But but you don't have a lot of time and money, and you're not looking for leisure. You're not walking around going, I have this disposable income. Gosh, what can I do with it? And if you think about the guy who has worked all day long with his sons and daughters, in the evening, sitting down at a table that he built, in a house that he built, eating the food that he raised, I mean, that's a satisfying life. And I think that he's saying, that's it. When you get beyond that, and yes, that's what happens. Now you start. What did he call that? Surrogate. I forgot. I didn't bring my manifesto with me.
He had another word, something like that. Yeah.
So now your manufacturing goal is like, okay, I will be the best mountain climber. I will learn. I will collect. I will have the greatest Beanie Baby collection.
Yeah.
And it becomes silly and stupid. Vacationing, going to Disneyland because I can't think of what to do. I don't know how to have fun. I'm going to go somewhere where they have manufactured fun for me. I'll stand in line, and then you know what I mean. He says this is all stupid.
Now he did also mention some of the rich who ended up taking on very interesting career paths. Like for example, there was a Hirohito who became like a world-class molecular biologist or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so there are, but his criticism of that is that it's all made up. It's not.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
Necessary.
Right. He's like, yes, there can be beneficial aspects to having a lot of, having your material needs met very easily, and now you have a lot of time and income to do other things. But you're exactly right. Some of them are admirable, but even those.
And why?
Are manufactured.
And what's his fundamental reason for saying that those things aren't right or aren't noble or aren't whatever he expects them to be? I know one of the things that was a big theme in the manifesto was autonomy and power. He says people should have power to control their own lives, and they should have autonomy of decision making. They shouldn't be controlled by some other force. But was there anything else? And that's kind of the only thing I saw that he was hanging everything on those two things: power and autonomy.
Yes, kind of.
Yeah.
But so compare the frontiersman. To instead, he's like, I think I'll just go get a job in a factory and spend which is the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah.
Industrial Revolution. All right, forget that. I'm going to leave my family, and I'm not going to go somewhere to build shoes. I'm going to go somewhere to just build the heels of shoes.
Right.
Right. So
I'm going to work. I'm going to be a cog in a machine.
A cog in a machine.
Yeah.
So what the system does is teach you to do one minor, nearly insignificant thing well enough that you'll show up, be obedient, do what you're told, participate in the system, and we'll give you enough money to cover your basic needs, and then some extra stuff for you to go have hobbies and be silly. But you won't disrupt the system. And he's just saying there ain't no way to live.
Yeah, well, that's his opinion. That's no way to live. I think the thing is, if you were to go out to that guy on the frontier, and he's been working all day to try to chop down trees and plow a couple acres and all that sort of thing, and you offer him a tractor, he's going to say, "Sure, I'll take the tractor."
Yeah, right. I mean, as far as introducing technology,
yeah.
Yes, but he's still autonomous. He still has the power over his own life,
Mm-hmm.
And that which slowly disappears because right. So there was a time not that long ago when 80% of people were involved in farming and farming.
Yes.
And now, like 3% of the population grows all of the food for everyone.
Right.
So that's the way the system works. It's like we'll take that away from you and we'll replace it with some sugar candies and MTV and.
So I was thinking about one way that what the Unabomber was saying resonated with me was, imagine you live at a time where your way of getting around is a horse. All right, so you've got to take care of this horse. You've got to make sure it's well fed and watered. When you come home at night, you can't just throw it in the stable. You got to brush it down. You got to make sure he's the horse is something that you actually are going to care about in a very different way than you would care about a car.
Right.
You don't have any feelings for, at least sane people don't have any feelings for a car, but you do have feelings for a horse. It's kind of your friend. You want to take care of it. So there is a way in which industrialized society moves us out of those kinds of natural relationships.
Yeah.
Natural relationships with animals, with
nature.
Ground, with nature, and now we have a car. Okay, we don't have a relationship with an animal or something to care about. So that side of it, I understand that kind of resonated with me. It didn't convince me.
But see, a lot of this technology are these energy-saving devices.
Yeah.
So now you don't have to spend all day. So the drudgery of washing clothes
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it is that the technology makes easier for you. I think what he would be saying, time-saving devices for what? So you can watch more TV? So you can... You know what I mean? It's like, what is wrong with taking half a day to wash your clothes?
Well, there's also the perspective that says that leisure time is where we get culture from. If you don't have leisure time, you can't sit around and figure out how to play the guitar.
Yeah, that's true. But technology isn't in conflict with culture. So of course, civilization does that. Civilization allows people to a society to have poets and writers who are not plowing the land. You don't have to have everybody plowing the land. You don't have to have everybody making their own shoes. So there is a division of labor,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. Like I said, with the shoemaker, everybody's not making their own shoes, right? That's where commerce and you do your own thing. But that shoemaker is not in a factory. That's the next step where taking his labor and turning it into a cog in the machine, as opposed to a craftsman.
Right, and I get that whole, the Industrial Revolution, especially in the early days, was dehumanizing. You had somebody, it was awful
all
work.
the child labor and dangerous conditions and the filth. And
everything. It was very, very difficult. However, people moved in from the country to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two main things that I criticize about his perspective. One is that he's too reductionist about what it is that's important to people. He wants to reduce it down to power and autonomy. And I think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's a lot more needs than just power and autonomy. There's having a sense of purpose. There's having people that you love. There's other things that are important to people than just those two things. So I thought that was a little reductionist. And the second thing that was a little reductionist is he wants to say, okay, you'd be better off, working in your own little cobbler place, working all day to make 3 pairs of shoes, where, okay, but nobody makes that choice. In the real world, everybody prefers labor-saving devices. People don't want to spend all day washing clothes when they can just throw things in a washing machine.
Right.
So he's trying to say, I'm going to force my quirky attitude about labor on everybody else.
Right. Well, I think because so the result of this is saying there's no coming back from this. There's no tweaking around the edges. There's no dialing it back a little bit.
Right, from his
We've
perspective.
gone too far, and he's probably right. But what he could have done, which isn't very interesting or dramatic, was say, reading this manifesto, if you stop before you get to the bombing part, and you go, hey people, examine your lives, see where you fit. Do you want to be the cog?
Yeah.
Find beauty in your life. Don't just, collect Beanie Babies. Right. Monster truck rallies can't be the center of your life. Understand what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yes.
I think
there's a lot. There's a lot
could have come from this.
Yes, and there's a lot to be said.
Without going back to 1820.
Does technology alienate us from one another? Well, of course it does. You see a bunch of people sitting around a table and they're all looking at their phones, and they're not talking with one another. They're looking at their stupid phones. So obviously, technology from the beginning has done a lot of things that alienates us from nature. It alienates us from one another. It alienates us from ourselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So yes, those are all legit criticisms, and so let's find a way to try to undo those mistakes.
Yeah.
But trying to reduce it all down to everything's about power and autonomy, and everybody should live in the woods. And
the only way to get there is to go back to 1820.
Yeah.
And the only way to live like that is to have about the same number of people.
Yes.
So we'd have to have 5 million people in the country. Well, I guess him trying to kill 23 people is just a start, because we've got another 375 million that we got to get rid of in order to have this lifestyle that you think that we'd all be better off having.
Yes, I always find that interesting when people say that, the world would be better off if there were only so many millions of people. Like, what are you talking about? What are you going to do with all these people?
Yeah. All right. How come none of the people who advocate for that ever volunteer to kill themselves?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
We could start with you. How about that? And maybe one less person.
That's right.
But I thought in thinking about the pioneer guy.
Yeah.
Life, how much different life is from 1850 to 1950. And he's right, because you could go like 1450 to 1650. If you went to a time machine, you'd be like, I don't know.
It's not that much different.
It's not that much different.
We changed from matchlocks to flintlocks.
Yeah, right. You'd mostly see it on the battlefield, and otherwise, I don't know.
Everything's about the same.
Yeah, and then as you backed up, those rapid changes would become even less so.
Yes.
So there is something about the rapid change.
Yes.
But I thought in terms of the rapid change, what about the man in 1850 and the man in 1950 who cut themselves while farming and it gets infected?
Exactly.
The man in 1950 gets antibiotics and the man in 1850 gets a bone saw.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, there's a few things that you could just go, I get what you're saying about this whole back to nature thing, but you can't pick and go, you can't say, oh, no. I mean, I want these good things of technology, but not these, it's just a thing.
Yeah. And that's, so 2 comments about that. One, you're absolutely right that the guy in 1850, he sure wished he had antibiotics. just like the poor farmer in Africa today.
With his traditional farming techniques.
Yes, that Al Gore is trying to force him to stay in. He'd be perfectly happy to have a gas-powered tractor, I tell you.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it. And then there's the question of, fine, let's figure out what are the things that we're missing. And let's try to incorporate those back into our lives, in the life that we actually have. But trying to throw out all these good things that we have
Yeah.
because we've missed something. Well, that's not the right approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think stripping down, starting with your storage room and your garage, you could probably simplify your life. And we could all simplify our lives in a good way without living in a 10 by 12 foot
or spend
cabin.
spend more time talking to our family. I mean, there's all kinds of things
in
that
nature.
we can, yeah.
Yes. So the recognition of what technology is. Do you remember the book Future Shock?
No.
So the Future Shock, it was like probably late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically the same idea.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, if you drew a graph of technology,
Yeah.
and it just spikes,
Sure.
and then now it's even spiking, and it's going even faster.
Yes.
And the argument being, look, we're not really built for this.
Mm-hmm.
That technology is moving. We're always been able to keep up with the very slow change of technology, and it's kind of making us crazy.
Yes.
Now, but of course, this guy didn't come to the conclusion of, so we need to burn it all down. He was just sort of pointing it out, like, let's understand that some of our crazy is self-induced.
Yes.
This is where it's coming from.
Yes.
How can we mitigate the crazy without getting rid of antibiotics and air travel?
Right, exactly. Like, for example, Ben Shapiro talks about things like, it really would be better if people were in like bowling leagues, and so if there were local things that people were involved in, if people had some participation in civic life rather than sitting at home, everybody being isolated in their own little thing. So yes, there are lots of criticisms about what technological society has done to us, but the answer isn't to try to live without antibiotics.
Yes. Especially in the early part of the 20th century, civic organizations were extremely important.
Yes.
And people were in the Moose Lodge and
Yes.
all of those
And
the Rotary Club
exactly.
and Freemasons and all
the important thing about all that, one important thing about all that kind of stuff is you're on your bowling league, or you're in the Rotary Club, or you're in the Knights of Columbus, or whatever the heck it is, and with all sorts of different kinds of people. And
making connections.
Yeah, some of them are Democrats, some of them are Republicans, some of them, they have all these different ideas, and you go, you're fine, but we're all still in this same group together, and you make these connections where now we've become so so narrow. You only get along with somebody who agrees with you on all these political points and everything else.
Yes. So as I was seeing his argument, I'm going, you're talking about life in the 70s. Through the 90s. Mm-hmm. Boy, if you were around now, if you thought it was bad in 1990, you didn't see you were. This is before computers. This is before the internet. This is before social media and cell phones.
Right.
If you think it was bad then,
yeah,
I got something to show you.
Right. Which is why a lot of people go back and read this and say, "Wow, wasn't it prescient and wasn't it insightful?" And there is some insightful stuff in what he's saying. I just don't like his solutions or his obviously
burning everything down. So when I think about technology and modernity, modern living, all of that, you go, well, now we have pesticides and preservatives and potential carcinogens, and we foul the air. We eat unhealthy food of processed sugars and empty carbohydrates, and I think, and we can also feed the whole world.
Exactly.
About 3, right? So is the biggest problem we have too much accessible and inexpensive food?
Yeah.
Would you rather, in the name of getting rid of that, I forgot to mention the extra 30 years of life expectancy.
Right.
So so that we don't die of cancer at 80, we'll get rid of all of the technology so we can die at 45.
Yeah, I remember reading an article a little while ago arguing that the McDouble, the burger at McDonald's, is like the pinnacle of technological society. that for $1 you can get this sandwich that like kings couldn't have had.
Yeah, right. That's funny. Yeah, right. And did you see the guy that what was the Supersize Me?
Oh yeah.
Right. So after this guy goes on and goes, I'm going to show you what happens if you eat McDonald's. every meal for a month, and he's so sick. And then a nutritionist professor goes, yeah, if you stuff your face with it.
Right, exactly.
So he ate nothing but McDonald's for a month, and all of his numbers got better because he stuck to a 3,000 calorie
there you go.
diet.
Exactly. I've wondered about that.
Yeah, he was like, he says, no,
just eat responsibly.
Yes, everything that your body needs, you can find on a McDonald's menu.
Right.
And so it's not McDonald's, it's the fact that you ate like a pig.
Right.
Because his point should have been, the excessive portions that people are shoving in their faces. But he tried to make it about unhealthy McDonald's fast food, and this nutritionist professor is like, well, that's not exactly how it works.
Well, think about what a McDonald's meal was like back in the early days of McDonald's. It was a hamburger, a Coke, and fries. The little hamburger, the little Coke, and the little fries. It's really not that much food.
It's not that much food.
Nowadays, people get, a double quarter pounder and a milkshake.
Yeah.
It's just
everything is supersized.
Yeah.
Mediums are. Yeah. And now there are places. Actually, even Starbucks, you can't order a small.
No, there's no such thing as a small.
Well,
you can't get a cup of coffee anywhere. A cup
you
of
have to
coffee
get
is
a
8
tall.
ounces. Yeah.
First of all, it's got to be a tall. Can I just get a small cup of black coffee? We don't know what you're talking about.
Right. I like those little mini. I don't drink soda hardly ever.
Right.
But when I do, like if I need a little bit of caffeine, I'll get one of those little 8-ounce Cokes. That's perfect for me.
They come in like a
the little tiny, the little tiny cans. Yeah, I love those. I mean, that for the 3 times a year that I drink a Coke, that's what it's going to be. All right, so it's interesting stuff. Interesting fellow, genius guy. I mean, despite he's an evil genius, but he's a genius.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad idea to read some of it just to get a sense of.
It's recognizing that that there is such thing as there is a system that feeds itself. There's actually, it sounds like Foucault, if Foucault was legible. If you could get through if he would just dial it down so that some normal person could read it.
Yeah.
A lot of it is kind of like this, about how there's this system that controls people.
Yes.
And gives you just enough freedom so that you can participate in the machine.
Yeah. It's funny you should bring that up, and here's why it's funny you should bring that up. Because that's one of the questions that I asked ChatGPT. Was what's the difference? Both Kaczynski and postmodernism view power as a fundamental problem. That they both deal with power. So I was asking ChatGPT what's similar and what's different between Kaczynski and postmodernism. It was very interesting because Kaczynski was viewing power in a relatively traditional sense as it's technological industrial society that is the source of power, where Foucault and the postmodernists see power in like everything, in all
individual relationships.
Yeah, in every kind of thing, in the way we use words, and in all these other different ways. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Both with too much of a focus on power, but in different ways.
Interesting. Yeah. The Churchill quote, "Democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others."
Yes.
Yeah. I think you could Marxism. Marx spent all of his time criticizing capitalism and offered very little.
Yeah.
To replace it. Now, I would say yes. Capitalism is the worst economic system except for all the others.
Yeah.
And I think you could apply it to Kaczynski. Modernity is the worst time to be alive except for pre-modernity. Right?
Yes. I don't want to go
sorry, it's terrible. Yes, it's terrible. But it's less terrible.
Yes, I do not want to go to a dentist in 1850.
Okay, so let's get to what this is really all about.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot about his personality and his psychology.
Yes.
The psychology aspect. So first off, the genius part means he already had a difficult time making friends.
Yes.
And now he's a 14-year-old hanging out with 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's all right. So he's already kind of rejected by this. He's the brainiac. Yeah. He's going to be small.
Right.
So he got that going for him. But let's back up to his infancy.
Yeah.
Do you remember that incident there? He has something that they take him to the hospital.
They take him to the hospital. He was stuck in the hospital for a month or something, and then afterwards he was never the same.
They wouldn't. So he had zero contact with any human being during.
Wow. Why would you do that to a kid?
They wouldn't let the parents come see him. It wasn't that long, but it still seems like a very long time for an infant,
Yeah.
or 1-year-old, 2-year-old, not to be picked up and held by.
I
by
heard about
anybody.
this. I heard about this experiment where some king wanted to find out what language children would naturally speak just on their own. Like if you didn't teach them to speak German or whatever, what language would they speak? Because he assumed that would be like the original human language. So he had this whole collection of kids raised.
See, that's what you could do really solid science.
I know, yeah. So he had this whole collection of kids raised where no one spoke to them.
Right, great.
And they wanted to find out, like, they didn't have any real contact with anybody. They wanted to find out what language they spoke. The problem with the experiment was all the kids died.
That is a problem.
Yeah. So it reminds me of Kaczynski's experience, sticking him in this environment where he's not being held, he's not being touched, he's not being spoken to. No, there's no human interaction.
He rejected that, well, of course, because I'm sure he wants to say that nothing influenced his.
Yeah, of course, nothing except pure intellect.
Pure intellect.
Yeah.
But it was his mother told the brother David later on in life, with great reluctance, that he never quite seemed the same. That that little baby, that spark of cuddliness, he was distrustful.
Mm. Wow, what an awful thing to do to a kid.
So you're super intelligent, which means you kind of can't relate to the other kids anyway.
Right.
You have this personality defect that may or may not have come from this childhood experience.
Yeah.
You go to Harvard where you're too young, and then he engages in that Harvard experiment.
Right.
Which had to do with,
it was like a CIA thing where they were trying to break you down.
Yes.
They were trying to break down all your defenses so that they could then like force you into something or influence you in a certain way.
Right. I guess they would use what they've learned in their interrogation techniques, or some such thing, and it had to do with belittling and berating you intellectually, and that's so He didn't have friends. He wasn't an athlete. He didn't have girlfriends. The only thing he had was his intellect that made him special. And this was specifically designed to belittle any thought, his intellectual ideas.
And the weird thing about it was, this kind of gets back to this power and autonomy thing, is that he stuck with that program through several years. Like he didn't just
and again did not look back on that with any disdain.
Quite a lack of self-reflection from this guy.
Yeah. And so he never got past first base. There's the old,
right.
There's that aspect of it. Never had any love.
Behind every crazy man is no woman. Maybe, I don't know.
Right.
Just made that up.
Right. That's pretty good though. I like it. Behind every suicide bomber is probably also
is no woman.
Yes. So not having that, so then after all of this manifesto, he says, I wasn't doing this out of any altruistic intent or to achieve any good, whatever that is. It was pure revenge. So after you've written this entire manifesto on this philosophically based,
you admit that you're just a rotten person.
You're just a misanthrope that hates humanity.
Right. Yeah, which I think is behind a lot of these ideas, these change the world ideas. I think a lot of them really come down to just kind of being nasty minded. Or
the cult leader that has this perfect system.
Right.
He just really wants to have sex with all the women, or you know what I mean, or be revered and has a personality defect.
Yeah. All right. So, Mr. Kaczynski,
well, you are not our man of the week.
No, you're not our man of the week. And I had a reader question, but it's getting kind of late, so I'll hold that one.
Ted really kept our attention, didn't he?
Yes, he did. All right. Well, very good.
All right.
Cheers.